Welcome back to the Miscellaneous channel where we do miscellaneous things. I'm Zeleny. So in today's video, I thought it'd be a fun idea to sort of explain the context behind different famous America's Next Top Model GIFs. I can't believe I haven't done an America's Next Top Model video yet. I think I've mentioned it before, but America's Next Top Model is one of my favorite shows of all time. Well, not favorite, but it's one of my comfort shows that I rewatch all the time. RuPaul's Drag Race has sort of carried on the torch for the girls and gays to have their own version of the Super Bowl, but originally I feel like Top Model was that show, though I never got to the heights that RuPaul's Drag Race got to in fame and popularity. It's still a cult classic, and there's a lot of people that have rediscovered it, rewatched it, and it has led to many iconic moments. This show actually has so many iconic GIFs and memes that came from it. So I wanted to sort of provide context, provide background, and an explanation as to why that GIF happened, why that moment in that meme happened. Okay, let's get started. So I think the way I want to do this is to first provide the explanation and the context. I guarantee if you are someone on the internet, someone that has watched a show, or someone that uses GIFs often, you have seen most, if not all, of the ones I will show in this video. So first I'll give you the explanation and the context, and then show you what GIF it resulted in. Okay, so I'm going to start with one that is pretty iconic. It is, actually, I mean, everything on this list is actually really, really famous as a GIF, but, so it's the first episode of season 1, and Tyra is calling out with the group of girls who made it into the competition as a cast, who made it into the first top model. She is calling names of girls, and they're excited. Mildly, excited to be on the show. Then she calls a contestant named Ebony, and Ebony reacts with this. So yes, Ebony, the contestant, provided the iconic fake out crying moment where she gets called, she is crying, and then she is over it. Honestly, I think the emotion was genuine. You can see her after that moment crying again, like when she's in line with the accepted people. It was just genuine sort of like mix of emotions, of like a lot of emotion and crying, and then like I'm a bad bitch sort of energy. Ebony was actually a really cool contestant in season 1. She was very important as representation for the LGBT community at the time. It was 2003, and surprisingly, there are a lot of girls in the house that view that as sinful and still very taboo to be gay. So Ebony was very important in just showing, a black lesbian woman who is proud of who she is and not ashamed of her sexuality or anything like that. She actually has another iconic GIF moment in this same season. It's in the next episode, episode 2, and season 1 famously had a lot of rivalry between Christian girls and non-Christian girls the whole time. So there was like cliques in the house of like the super religious Christian girls, and then the like punk and atheist and non-super Christian people. I mean, it was super messy, and it led to a lot of like crazy like WTF moments that, like, I don't know, they would never happen today. So there's one point where this contestant named Ebony, so she found a Tyra mail, which is how Tyra communicates with them in the house, telling them they were going to have a photo shoot at a certain time, whatever. So Ebony finds that mail and shows it to everyone else, right, which is typical in this show. Later, she admits to another one of the cast members that, like, she wishes she had kept the Tyra mail to herself and not shown it to anybody, just to sabotage the competition kind of thing. But then at the end of the conversation, she's just like, oh, but I didn't do that. I should have done it, but I didn't. And things like that. Just this confession gets all of the girls super heated, especially the Christian girl leader, Robin. They get super pissed at Ebony that she could have done this. She didn't hide the Tyra mail, but they're mad at the possibility that she wanted to, potentially, possibly, and Robin tries to spin it as this big, like, oh, the Christian girls would have never done that. So this leads to a big fight in the common room with all the girls, and Ebony and Robin are just yelling at each other about this. All the girls are like freaked out around them and annoyed, And then Robin just starts singing to like calm down the situation. She just starts singing a hymn in the middle of yelling, and it is super random, but it actually works. It calms down everybody. Because of that, she makes everyone get in a circle and pray and leads a very intense prayer where she is like crying. Everyone's crying. The atheist girl, Elise, is crying because she's so uncomfortable. And then during this prayer circle, while everyone's having their eyes closed, crying, and listening to Robin pray intensely, Ebony opens her eyes, looks straight at the camera, and does this. That's another super iconic GIF, I think, that Ebony provided us. So Ebony provided us two super cool GIF moments that apply to many situations online. So next I'm going to talk about a moment that it's less of a meme or a GIF, but it changed pop culture forever, which there's a couple like this on the list, I guess. This one like really impacted reality TV and pop culture, I believe. So season 6, which is the best season of all time, I definitely recommend it if you are just looking for some trashy reality competition. Season 6 of America's Next Top Model is literally the best. It's mainly due to like this very crazy cast of characters, including Jade, who she's one of my favorite reality TV contestants of anything of all time because she is so wacky and like so unself-aware and so like, oh my god, you have to see it to understand, but if you've seen season 6, you know Jade. So the show really did Jade dirty and gave her like the most horrendous makeover of all time. On Top Model, honestly, they cut her hair super short and bleached it. She just looked crazy and she hated it. She was so upset that her hair was short in any way. And thought she looked crazy. And she's right. So after the makeovers, they're in the house and Jade is trying to get to the phone. In the house, they usually share a common phone and take turns to call their families from it. Jade is mad that this other contestant named Wendy is on the phone, and Jade is mad because she hasn't been able to talk to her family since her horrendous makeover. She's trying to go and complain to her family about how bad her hair looks, but she can't because the phone is taken. Jade is just waiting outside the phone area, just sort of ranting a little bit about how, she hasn't had time with the phone. She starts going off on how she's from New York City, she's from the belly of the beast, and how she deserves respect, and all these things for that. Everyone around her is kind of laughing at her a little bit, just like, because she's being so random and crazy and ranty, and she's just wild. Like you cannot laugh when someone next to you is like, I'm from New York City, the belly of the beast. And she says it like in all seriousness. And so everyone's kind of laughing. And that sort of like sets her off. She just gets up and she's like, this is a competition. This is not America's Next Top Best Friend. That line became iconic in reality television forever. It has been applied to RuPaul's Drag Race. It has been mentioned in sort of every variation of competitive reality TV. I'm not like 100% sure that Jade is the first one to say this in a reality competition, but I feel like it was, or she was one of the first that really popularized this idea that I'm not here to make friends sort of idea on reality TV. She sort of went MIA after the show and didn't really come back into the spotlight or Hollywood in any way, so I'm glad Jade's legacy really lives on with this quote. The aftermath of all that is like the other contestants still sort of laughing at her being ridiculous. For Rhonda, who is another contestant who was sort of like a friend with Jade, but also like a really good foil, because Rhonda was also a really interesting character, but she was like more of like the good guy while Jade was like sort of the bad guy. And Rhonda's just like, you're in your panties, because Jade is just like doing this in her panties. And Jade answers, of course I'm in my panties, and I look damn good. And Rhonda's just like, oh my god. And then Jade just like insults the crown she's wearing. She's like, those aren't even real diamonds. And it's clearly like a crown from Party City. Like, Rhonda's not wearing this crown thinking it's real diamonds. Like, and then finally, to end the scene, Wendy comes out of the phone. Finally, it's Jade's turn to use a phone. And Wendy's like, maybe like calm down a little bit. Sasses Jade a little bit. And Jade's just like, bye-bye J-Lo, bye-bye J-Lo. Because the judges had mentioned Wendy looks like J-Lo. It's just Jade is like unhinged that whole season, and that's why it's so worth watching. So another moment from season 6 that is heavily GIFed, and this one is pretty self-explanatory. So Tyra brings in the girls. She brings them all backstage of her talk show, The Tyra Show, a show I watched way too much and definitely corrupted me in ways. Tyra brings the girls backstage and starts talking to them just about modeling, how, like, checking in, how are y'all doing? And then Tyra starts to just be like, I'm sorry, you guys. I've been working so hard, and I'm so tired. She starts like having a headache, and she's like, and then she's like, oh, maybe I need to get some water or something. And then she gets up, and then immediately falls, just falls on the ground, pretends to faint, and the girls are freaking out. They're like, oh my God, Tyra, oh my God. After the girls freak out for a sec, she's like, I'm okay. And she starts getting up, like, oh. And then all of a sudden she's like, today you're going to learn about acting. Ha ha. Acting. Ha ha. She's like, oh, I pranked you. Ha. And the girls are just like, some of them were like crying. It was so sad. So that's just another funny moment from season 6. But season 6 has so many funny moments. Those are the most famous, but it has so many funny moments. So worth watching. So I'm going to keep going with Tyra moments that are famous. So another one that is pretty self-explanatory, but I think this is the most famous moment of telemodel history. Let me start at the context. Man, how far do I go with this one? There was a contestant named Tiffany. She actually auditioned for season 3, and you see her in the first episode of season 3 as part of the casting special part. And Tiffany got into a bar fight, and you see it in season 3's like casting special episode. I think because of that fight, they cut Tiffany and didn't let her into the cast of season 3. Like, honestly, that bar fight was not Tiffany's fault. Like, they were instigated by strangers at the bar. It was super weird. Like, Tiffany fought with a stranger, not someone from the cast. But anyway, so Tiffany didn't make it onto season 3. But then that gave the America's Next Top Model production team this whole opportunity with this contestant. And season 4, they brought Tiffany back. They gave her this whole backstory that she went to anger management. She is reformed now. She would never be in a bar fight ever again. She was suffering from severe poverty, and her grandma really wanted her to be on the show. So Tyra really was like latching on to this girl's backstory. She starts a competition. She's doing pretty well. And then somewhere in the middle of the season, the whole judges panel is really underwhelmed by the shoot. I think it's the dog shoot. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, but I think it's the dog shoot. Honestly, I think the photo shoot concept is bad. Like, usually when they have those weeks on Top Model, it's because, like, the shoot is bad quality. Like, the photographer's bad, the editing on the photos is bad. Like, it's really not the model's fault. But anyway, they were like, everyone sucked this week, basically. And Tyra's like, they need a wake-up call. You probably guessed by now where this is going. This whole episode is called The Girl Who Sends Tyra Over the Edge. The girls in judging, they also have this like little challenge during the judging, and the challenge this week is to read from a teleprompter. The trick to this challenge is that they put a bunch of big words in the teleprompter script that the girls will probably not know because they're pretty young and might not know a lot of these designer names or weird words that are like more intellectual. So when it's Tiffany's turn for this teleprompter challenge, she sort of gives up before the challenge even begins, and you see Tyra sort of be upset, and the judge is trying to encourage her to like keep going. You know, they put all these big words in there, and Tiffany just feels defeated at this point, feels like, you know, they are just sabotaging her and making her embarrassed. So I think that was the big thing. Tiffany felt like they kept like humiliating her, so she was just over it at that point. The judges assure her that all of the girls read, like, even worse than she was doing, and, like, it's fine, just go for it. They were right, honestly. Everyone read this horribly. And this led to sort of a famous clip where Tiffany's just like, can you say magnetic? Because it's, like, magenta in the teleprompter. It's just kind of a famous moment. And, yeah, like, they put in all these words that were hard, like chartreuse and, like, Comme des Garçons and all these things, like designers and crap like that. So when Tiffany is walking off the runway, she's just like under her breath, like, oh, It just gets more humiliating every week. And Tyra is mad. You see shots of her. Tyra's mad. Elimination time comes, and there's the bottom two, and Tyra's gonna call one of them, supposedly, to stay. And Tyra pulls a shocking move and eliminates both of them. She pulls out a blank page. Neither of them is staying, and bye, both of y'all. It's Rebecca and Tiffany. So we see Rebecca, the blonde one, she's like crying, like having a normal reaction, or an acceptable reaction for Tyra for being eliminated. But Tiffany just is fine. You see she's at peace with it. She's like sort of laughing with the other girl. It's just like, hey, bye, girl. Like, haha. It's cool. Like, you know, whatever. Tyra calls both of them back from saying goodbye to the other girls and starts her rant. She tells Rebecca she appreciates her emotion and that that's appropriate, but she starts yelling at Tiffany for not trying in the challenge, for giving up, for like disappointing her grandmother. Tyra gets very personal against Tiffany from like about her backstory. She's like, after all the anger management, after, you know, your grandma gave up all her savings to buy you a bathing suit, after everything you've been through and all these things. And that leads to the iconic line, I was rooting for you, we were all rooting for you, how dare you? Learn something from this. It's so rude, honestly. A lot of other things have come out about this moment, and this has been confirmed by a lot of people that were on set, but apparently this rant was much, much longer, much more personal, much more just targeted at Tiffany. Very intense. So intense that the director, Ken Mock, or a producer or someone had to like physically drag Tyra off set while still screaming. And it was like a very traumatizing experience for everyone on set, it sounds like. That was kind of a terrifying moment. It was just, it became iconic. It's the most famous moment from Top Model. It was parodied a bunch. The GIF is very popular as well because it applies to many situations. I was rooting for you, we were all rooting for you. It seemed like Tyra was really banking on Tiffany to win and have this very intense underdog story, but it just didn't work out with Tiffany's attitude that didn't match Tyra's idea of a winner. That was a super fucked up situation, to be honest. So the I was rooting for you rant happened in season 4. I don't know if I mentioned that. This one's like the second most famous, honestly, of Tyra's moments, I think, on Top Model, and it was kind of more positive. This is another one that sort of changed pop culture and became just a line that is everywhere now. So the next one comes from a sort of like mundane moment in judging, but it became a huge line that is everywhere. Like it like created a new structure of like phrase on the internet. So this came from a photo shoot in season 8. The photo shoot that week was a high school themed photo shoot of high school stereotypes. Each girl was assigned a high school stereotype character to play in their photo shoot. So there was like class clown and like valedictorian and cheerleader and things like that of like typical, you know, American high school theme. So one girl who was like 18 named Samantha was given the slut. I feel like they couldn't say the slut and they called her the girl with the bad reputation. So Samantha was a pretty sweet, virginal 18-year-old. She was a very young girl and she was having a very hard time being this like sexy character. So they're judging Samantha's photo and Tyra says, a lot of modeling is being a hoe and making it fashion. So like, hoe, make it fashion. Hoe, but make it fashion. And she just does this thing. And that phrase like changed the world. It was just so funny. One of those ridiculous Tyra advice moments that sort of, I feel like it picked up steam later on in Top Model history. Like, it was a pretty mundane moment, and I think this girl went home for this. So this girl didn't last long. She went home really early, and she wasn't very good. So that's why this is one of those moments that was just, like, iconic randomly, but, like, the situation wasn't this, like, big deal or anything. Nowadays, you see this sort of, like, blank but make it blank phrasing everywhere. Everywhere. You see that phrase. So I think besides Tyra, Miss J was someone on the Top Model that provided the world with many GIFs. Miss J was a runway coach on the judges panel on a bunch of the seasons of Top Model. So Miss J had so many moments, but I've picked 2. One of these was a reaction to Ann Ward, who she won one of the seasons. Miss J was reacting to the size of her waist. Ann Ward is like extremely tall. I think she's like the tallest person on Top Model ever, and her waist is like this big, literally. And Miss J was just like reacting to her waist. So that was one. And then another one was from Cycle 14. So this one was at a runway challenge that was pretty eventful. So Top Model loves to put the girls in these like crazy runway situations that would rarely happen in the real world, but whatever. This was definitely not the craziest that she did, but this was one where there was two medallions, huge medallions swinging across the runway, and they had to just model through and like time themselves correctly to not be hit by these medallions. One girl actually fell first at the top of the stairs, not even at the medallion part yet. She fell like down the stairs. It was so sad. And then she came down the stairs past the medallions, and on her way back was hit by one of the medallions off the runway completely. Like, it was so terrifying. Like, it literally, that is so terrifying to me. There was no like iconic GIF reaction to this one. I just thought this part was crazy. But as part of that runway, there's one contestant named Najwa who walks kind of bad, and Miss J has this reaction to it. And that's a famous GIF that is often for confusion, for I don't know. So the last one I have is pretty famous as well. It is from the same season, season 14, and it is by a contestant. The stuff that led up to it was pretty simple. This contestant named Alasia, she was sort of front runner in the competition, and then she had a really bad week. It was a photo shoot for CoverGirl in the subway of New York, and her picture came out really, really plain. The judges really hated her for it, and she was in the bottom that episode. Tyra does her little bottom two thing. Tyra's reminding her, like, hey, we feel like you've lost your passion, you're not using your strengths in your photo shoots and things like that, and saves Alasia over Brenda, the other girl. Alasia reacts very, very emotionally. She was a very emotive person throughout the season, so it made sense, and she reacts with that GIF. That GIF of just like sheer emotional joy. That was her reaction to being safe in the competition, and it was really sweet, and this GIF gets used all the freaking time. So that's all I have for my Top Model iconic GIFs explaining sort of the backstory behind each one. Please let me know in the comments if I missed any iconic Top Model moments, any great memes from the show, any of your favorite that you remember that you use often. And I'm sorry I say GIF. I mean, sorry if that bothers you. I know it bothers a lot of people. I'm just like, who cares? Who cares about GIF or GIF or bleh. Please like this video if you enjoyed and subscribe to my channel. I'm really trying to get to 10,000 subscribers. You can be number 30 or 31 or whatever I'm at. So I really appreciate it. I really hope you enjoyed this video. I will catch you in the next one. Bye.